What's going on, everyone? It's your boy Malik Washington. How you all doing this fine day or evening? I know it's been a while. I'm a horrible person, and it's been, I want to say, maybe 2 weeks or so since I've actually done a video. I just thought I'd come in and update and do a couple of episodes. No, not even a couple, maybe a few more than that, and discuss a few of the current events that we've been having going on in the world today. I've been keeping up with them. And I'm kind of backlogged right now with quite a lot of them that I wanted to talk about, but I'm going to just go through them step by step and, upload them on here and give you all my perspective as always on what I think about these uh, events that happened, the ones that I missed, the ones that I kind of neglected to talk about on my YouTube channel. So for my new subscribers, I apologize for not updating you all uh, on my channel as this podcast is active. I've been going through a lot mentally and trying to get some things together to where sometimes YouTube is not my ultimate priority, but I do it at times for therapy, sometimes just to, get things off my mind, compartmentalize. And then in other instances, I genuinely want to give my perspective on these matters because I think that it's important. And on top of that, I like to speak against certain things that I don't think is appropriate or I think America needs to rethink on these matters. But just wanted to let you know, if you think I'm a horrible person, I apologize, but I can't do anything with how you feel about me for not coming on here and giving you all, back-to-back episodes. I typically would if my life rendered me the ability to do so, but unfortunately it does not. So until everything over here is stabilized and I have everything together, then I could worry about doing YouTube full time or doing it somewhere else in case YouTube decides that they want to put me back in the little corner, you know, and I become completely irrelevant and nobody is able to find me because you know how the YouTube algorithm is as soon as you rise up, you get further and further and further along, the less you can actually say because the more exposure you get and you start reaching audiences or targeting members who don't really like what you have to say, and then you get flagged, which then leads to you being put back at square one. Because some people don't want you to, well, they don't want your message going out there, especially if they believe that you're promoting misinformation and all that jazz. No one can ever let you have a perspective just like everyone else and, utilize your free speech for whatever. Someone out there has to always control what you say and how you say it, how you deliver it to people. So you have to go according to how YouTube uh, wants you to propagate messages. Although for me, I am not the kind of person that likes to kiss ass, kowtow, or anything to anybody. But if I have to, put my message in a way that allows people to be able to kind of understand what I'm trying to say while not saying it out overtly, uh, they have to kind of read between the lines, if you will. Then if that's what I have to do, so be it. But nonetheless, there's other, apps out here that obviously allow you to speak your mind freely and you don't have to worry about censorship and all that jazz because I can't stand censorship. I believe everyone should have the ability, even if they hate people, I think they should have the ability to speak their mind and, express how they feel about things. You should not be the only one that gets to be the harbinger of information because you support every single group that's out here known to man. Me personally, I'm not that kind of guy. If you disagree or if you have a strong disliking towards someone, something, multiple groups, you name it, or a concept, I think you should be able to discuss it without it turning into a censorship party and everybody has to shut you down because they don't agree with what you're saying. You want to shut somebody down, argue the disposition, don't argue the character. And that's my disposition on that matter. But ladies and gentlemen, just to keep it short, and to keep the video short so it can actually upload here on YouTube. Here's hoping once you see this video. I want to dive into this topic shortly about what had been happening. This happened like maybe a month or so ago, with a lot of businesses turning towards promoting a lot of LGBTQ content related to both children as well as adults, and how the people who are, either independent or conservative or have no political affiliation at all, but they are parents, are kind of tired of how a lot of this stuff is being promoted to certain groups or age groups that is inappropriate to their development as human beings. And how if it was wrong for them to boycott these businesses because of that particular reason, right? Before we even dive into that, I kind of want to segue into it by talking about a couple of other things that had transpired prior. The main thing that had been happening was it began in the schools when the LGBTQ started promoting themselves a lot more overtly in the public sector, the public education sector. They started to push LGBTQ, history, ways, idealisms, you name it. And particularly the one that stood out was when they were allowing drag shows and they were allowing drag queen story time in these schools. Quite a few schools found it to be to be controversial, because when parents discovered that these individuals who were dressed in drag were going into these schools and they were reading to children, some of the parents did not want these ideas or these people to be presented in front of their children. They didn't think that it was appropriate. Some people, obviously, on the other side, thought it wasn't a good idea to do. They thought it was like a form of hatred, or that they hated drag people for even showing themselves and basically reading story time to their children. But the drag people felt like they weren't doing anything wrong by simply reading books to them, right? But parents felt like it just wasn't that time for them to be exposed to that type of thing, because children didn't know anything about that. Children were just worried about what children typically worry about. They want to play. They, of course, learn their ABCs and 1, 2, 3s by their teachers. They are taught reading. They do have story time, but nothing typically would relate to the LGBTQ or anything of that, any way, shape, or form. So these things were acquiesced against. That was one thing that transpired. Then it got a little bit deeper. Then the LGBTQ, some of these communities or some of these public schools that support them, then started to put books in public school libraries without the foreknowledge of the parents, and without affirmation from the parents to make sure if this was consensually okay for them to do. None of these books had even been inspected or anything. They just got put into the schools. But there were very sexually explicit books that were being put into these schools, and they were being checked out by students, particularly young children. I think how this whole thing even started was because a parent had asked the child when they came back from school what they had learned. And also the child had mentioned that they checked out a book that they were supposed to read. The parent saw the book and then kind of glossed over it and said, "Where did you get this from?" The child said that they got it from that. They said that their teacher wanted them to check the book out, so that it was because it was a part of their curriculum. And so as the parent was reading through it, the parent was disgusted by what they saw. And as was clearly told to the people at the school council meeting, the book propagated a lot of messaging about sexual genitalia between males and females, particularly males and males, females and women and women, men and men, and among other things that were very disgusting to hear. Quite frankly, a lot of parents were very upset about that. And so as a result, many of them acquiesced it at the schools. As a result, some people who were from the LGBTQ or who were gay, who were lesbian, you name it, were basically telling the parents that they were wrong for doing this because they were showing a form of hatred and they were teaching their kids to hate. to hate gay people. And in no way, shape, or form were the parents arguing this at all. It had nothing to do with the fact that someone was just gay or someone was lesbian. Their kids were too young. One. Two, that shouldn't be a criteria that was supposed to be in the schools in the first place, because there's kids are not there to learn about someone's sexual attraction to someone else. Now, there is such a thing as sex ed in school, but sex ed doesn't go in depth into sexual practices like some of these books did. Now, I don't have any specific books in my mind that I can clearly iterate to you all, but quite a few books are out there that were in these school libraries that were definitely not approved of by the parents. And clearly, some of them even read it out directly to the school councils, and the school councils would have to shut some of them down. I think a pastor went up there and read it to them, and the people just couldn't take it, and they said, enough, we don't want to hear it, stop reading it, enough. And so the pastor brought up a good point. He said, well, if I can't even read it to you, imagine how it's being read in the schools. Imagine reading this to little kids. If you all as adults don't even like what's being stated in those books, if you don't even want me to read it, why then would you put that in there for the little kids to read it? Why would you have people's children in there to hear about someone's penis, someone's vagina, masturbating, fingering, and all of that stuff, and how good it felt to do those things, which this book continues to iterate as you read it. So there's been a buildup with the LGBTQ and in combating parents in the public education sector. Then Pride Month came along, which is this month. Now you have businesses coming out and they're now promoting a lot of, as they always do in Pride Month. Again, all these businesses have been pandering since the past decade, I would believe, to even argue. It's not even really anything new. And it wasn't even anything wrong with them doing it when it came to adults, because, after you're 18, you can do whatever it is you want to do. Well, I'm sorry, when you're 18 and above, you can do whatever it is you want to do. You're an adult. You finally make the final decision to be who you want to be sexually, physically, spiritually, emotionally, whatever. Nobody can force or make you do anything you want to do. If you live here in this country, that's plausible for you. For other countries, I'm not certain how it works for you, but here you can do whatever it is you want to do. But a lot of businesses where the conservatives, independents, and everyone else got upset, it was not merely because it was just being promoted and there were products for Pride being pushed out there, but there was some material that was put out there that was specifically related to children, right? Some things of which shouldn't have really been put out there, but it was out there because in the name of pride. And some parents simply didn't agree with it. And so a lot of people, not even just parents this time, it was just regular people that were just saying, why is there this push for children to be advocated towards when it comes to pride? Why is this thing about pushing gender affirmations, gender identity, things related to being in pride and things like that? Why is this being pushed on children? Children should not have to be propagated into this ideal. Now, don't get me wrong. You do have parents who obviously are of the LGBTQ, who even prior, before they went into their identities, they had children. Some people even adopted children, and they have children within their group, and their children have been taught about the LGBTQ probably their entire lives, if you will. So if they grew into it, or if they were born into it, you can't really help that situation. But to those who don't follow the LGBTQ and their whole lives, they've taught their children to accept and respect and love everybody, but they didn't necessarily tell them that this was what the LGBTQ was doing was okay. This is controversial to them, because now it's almost like you're stepping on their toes when you're trying to push this on their children. And if the children don't accept these things, all of a sudden they're bad people. The adults are bad people. Similar to what happened in the public education sector, parents were demonized and they were told that they were terrorists by the FBI. Children would often even have scholarships revoked and would be demonized because they reiterated a lot of the talking points that their parents taught them about the LGBTQ, and teachers and things would demonize them for this. These businesses, because of business reasons, in which I can go into one reason why that is. It's already been put out there, so it's not like it's not public knowledge. But one of the reasons why they pretty much push Pride Month like any other month is pretty much because there's this quota that's out there that their liberal shareholders have been promoting as of late. And that's this this DEI quota. And if anyone doesn't know what DEI is, it's diversity, equity, and inclusion, which entails that businesses are supposed to, at some point, they're supposed to present instances where they have made efforts to try to push for the mission of diversifying their workforce, right? Making sure that their workspace is inclusive to not only just one demographic, but they are inclusive to all demographics, all orientations, you name it. Not basing it, and it's not based off of the fact that you have good merit or you have good work experience, your volunteer experience, anything like that. This is an entirely different criteria that helps to get people who are marginalized in marginalized spaces hired into their workforce. So what you end up becoming is a quote unquote diversity hire. And quite frankly, a lot of these businesses also, because they want to advocate for some of these groups who are marginalized and they want to give them representation, they also put out a lot of pride criteria. They put out criteria related to different groups. So when it's LGBTQ month, they put out pride. When it's Black History Month, they put out things related to Black people. When it's Pacific Asian Heritage Month, they put out material related to them. Anything that helps to advocate and increase their quotas, they're going to do it. And so ultimately, that's the reason why you will see a lot of that stuff is propagated. But not only, but particularly the businesses that I'm talking about that had been a big issue, aside from the children, had been companies like Bud Light, Kellogg's, Target, and quite a few other places. There's a list of it, actually. I wish I had it on hand, or I should have looked it up. But you know what? I'll even put it in the description for you. I'll find an article that talks about it, that gives a list of these businesses that have kind of went left and they promote LGBTQ all around, so that you guys can have that and look and see. Because there has been a huge boycott behind it. And these businesses have lost a lot of money as a result. And I'm sure you all know about the Bud Light controversy, but if you don't, to recap on it shortly, there was a guy named, a transgender named Dylan Mulvaney. Dylan Mulvaney is a trans woman, and clearly he feels like he's a woman. As a result, he got sponsored by Bud Light because again, going back to the DEI quote, they want to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. Going to the transgender community would have been a great opportunity to do that. So they went for the Dylan Mulvaney. He was highly known on TikTok. He has millions of, followers that follow him, and a lot of people that are influenced by him because of his lifestyle that he chooses to live. And so one day he came out and he was sponsoring for the beer company, because the VP of marketing decided that she wanted to go a different direction with the culture of beer, not realizing that she was not really advocating towards the audience that Bud Light initially had built for years on up, but she was advocating for a very fringe group of people that existed on the planet, because she felt like things needed to change with the beer culture. Again, trying to dismantle the system from within by being in a position where she felt like she would be able to get away with that. And if Americans wouldn't have complained or acquiesced, she would have, but it didn't happen. As a result, because Dylan Mulvaney had been sponsored and his face was put on a beer can, a lot of people who were hard workers, a lot of men in particular, who are construction workers, work in the blue collar field, that love Bud Light and like to come home to a nice cold beer, they threw it away. They just said, fuck it, we're not gonna deal with this. We're not going to tolerate that, because I'm not about to drink this with this person right here drinking. I'm drinking this beer with this person on the face of my beer can, because this is not dedicated to me. This is dedicated to an entirely different audience. As a result, you saw there was a lot of videos that was out on any social media platform. You could look it up, of just men just throwing their shit out and just getting a new can of beer from like other different beer companies like Coors, Miller, you name it, right? Heineken, places like that, Modelo, because they're tired of it. People want their own exclusive status to what they do and what they want, and trying to advocate for other groups whilst trampling upon what other people like to do and drink, eat or drink, entertain, you name it, in the name of your agenda, kind of makes it difficult for certain audiences to enjoy what they're typically used to enjoying. What I think the left has a tendency to do is they like to go into other people's sectors, and they like to present an idea. They like to present a case. They like to think that if they put it in front of your face and they normalize it and give you a rationale for why they think this is okay to do so, they figured that you would perhaps consider it and accept it for what it is. Once you accept it for what it is and you say, well, it couldn't be that bad, it gets worse. Once you take it an inch, they go a mile. And then you start to see things build up. Drag shows on kids, books, sexually explicit books in public school libraries, LGBTQ criteria being propagated to kids in the businesses, as well as the transgenderism being promoted in Bud Light, you name it, in the name of DEI quotas. A lot of these things are trying to be incorporated into policy. This way, you can't go against the things that they're doing towards what you love, what's been old school, or what's been preserved for some time, and now there's change being made. Now, don't get me wrong, change is hard for pretty much a lot of us, many of us. We don't want to give up what we have, and we're Americans. Obviously, we don't. We're a country that's all about rebellion. Anytime someone is trying to trample upon our personal rights, and as we should, stand up for what is happening to our rights, because that's what the old Americans used to do. Outside of the slavery and everything like that came with developing the country, nonetheless, the heart of the American mindset was to get away from heavy taxation, from draconian rules, and policies that trampled upon basic human rights under dictatorships and monarchies. And in the same instance, here in America, we kind of have similar forms of that. It's just in the form of monopoly, businesses, as well as under the pretext of oppression and marginalization. But ladies and gentlemen, you have to figure out for yourself how you wish to protect your kids, the world you wish to see for your children, how you wish to go about teaching them about what's around them. You can't deny, of course, that the LGBTQ is there, but you can deny any actions that are taken that are super extreme. We never have a problem with people existing. And the one thing that some Americans have fought for some groups of people is for them to exist. Like the LGBTQ at one point in time when they were being abused. Like Black people at one point in time when they were being abused. Like Jewish people at one point in time when they were being abused. Like Asians at one point in time when they were being abused. Anywhere there was oppression, there was always a select few people that were willing to stand up and go against these types of cultures. But I believe now in 2023, we have gone past a lot of that, and many of us are able to live. Some of us perhaps more are, it's more difficult than others based off of where we live or how we choose to do things. But nonetheless, getting a few, side eyes and being gawked at for what we do. I mean, that's kind of common when you're into these certain alternative lifestyles. And I don't mind allowing people of alternative lifestyles to do as they so choose, so long as I always tell you guys, they don't infringe upon our personal business or rights. When you're messing with kids, people should stand up against it. I don't think there's a problem with boycotting that. When you're messing with their children, I don't think there's a problem with boycotting that. They're not your children to teach or educate, or shall I say, indoctrinate into dogma related to what you chose to do with your life as an adult. Those children do not know about about male and female genitalia. They should grow up and be children. That's the way it should have always started. And that's the way it should end until they become adults and they make the personal decision to decide whether they want to go into the LGBTQ or not. It is not your job to tell them what they should or shouldn't do, or even try to impose it in a very subtle way. And parents, that should be their right to teach their children about the real world, if you will, and the forbidden fruit that we all get the conversation about. Should you have parents or father or mother figures who eventually do tell you about how these things work? So if people are boycotting, they have every right to, and they should. They should. And if anyone has a problem with it, then perhaps you need to take a second look at yourself. Because if it was something related to what you had going on, if somebody was trying to convert you from your LGBTQ premises, you all would be up in arms too. But nonetheless, it is what it is. We'll leave it right there. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Malik Washington. I hope you enjoyed this video. Have a good day or good night wherever you reside, and I thank you for listening if you got this far. Stay tuned until the next episode, and with this, I say peace.